Good morning, friends. It is October 28th, 2021. I tried to do this video yesterday morning, but got a fake news banner put up on the screen, so I figured I'd try it again. And I just wanted to do a little solution video to what I think are some of the, well, maybe one or two problems, but the biggest problem that I see affecting us all. And whether or not this is true, whether or not I'm right, it doesn't really matter. I'm reminded of a quote Henry Thoreau once said: "For every thousand men hacking away at the branches of evil, there's but one attacking the root." And I see this, and the media is great at manipulating that. Our school institutions are great at indoctrinating people not even to not recognize it, but to not even know some of the problems that are affecting us. I think for me, and the way I perceive the world and what's going on and our problems, is it comes down to one basic thing. And like I said, I could be wrong. I'm more than willing to be wrong and accept that, but you got to prove it to me. I think that we can all agree, and this is an important part of any argument, is that we have to agree on certain truisms, like gravity. We can all see that in action. And then we also have to define the words the same way, because if we're not defining the words the same way, it's really hard to communicate. And so the root problem that I see that affects us all, and it's not just as individuals or married couples and families, but it's the world, is money. Money makes the world go round, right? Well, here's my question. How many people can describe what money is? And there's a difference between money and currency. I'm not going to get into that. This video could be really, 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 really long, but so I'm going to try and condense the things down. But who can describe what fractional reserve banking is? Who can tell me when the Federal Reserve was established and what the Federal Reserve does? Who can tell me who was behind it, where these people met? Who can tell me why they did what they did? The fact of the matter is, and here's the fact, is that there is no way our debt could be paid off. We're a consumption-driven economy. 70% of our economy is consumption-driven, and so we have to spend and borrow to grow, which is insane. It's not sustainable, and it's not healthy across any context, whether economically or spiritually or anything. I don't think it's a healthy system. And so, personally, I like stories and movies that, pull yourself up by the bootstrap and go make something out of yourself. But here's the thing. Even if 100% of the population had the resources and the knowledge and the capabilities to be somebody and to be wealthy, it's impossible. It's mathematically impossible. And if you study what fractional reserve banking is, you'll see that. There is no way that 100% of the population can be in the black. We have to operate in the red. We're spending trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, and we're just printing it out of thin air. Here's a question. Well, why not just print the income tax out of thin air? Why not just print your property tax out of thin air so that you can actually be free? Anybody got an answer to that? Because you're cattle, you're property of the state, and they want to make sure that you stay property of the state. That's why they don't teach you these things in school. And of course, there are people out there that have a different take. We need a central bank. The Federal Reserve and the IMF and all of these things, these are good institutions. And I'm saying, no, they're not. And of course, it all depends too on how you want to evolve your society. I mean, are we moving in the right direction? My solution to this problem, and I'm gonna try and stay on track because I can go off many tangents on this in terms of freedom and whatnot. But the solution, I should stop this too and say right here that if I had my way, if I were a dictator for 10 years, let's say, or 8 years, I'm going to tell you and promise you up front that the first year or two is going to be painful. You're going to be out of your comfort zone. You're going to not have the things that you're used to having, actually borrowing and putting on a credit card to get. You're not going to have those things. And so I would say that it's important to prepare mentally for that. But after 2 years, 2.5 years of kind of a little bit of a transition to a different system, human beings were adaptable. And so we would figure out a way to make a different system work. And then by the 7th and 8th year, the majority of people's lives in this country are going to be much, much, much better and much healthier. But for those of you who are looking for a quick fix, because everybody wants, well, what's the solution then? Well, there isn't an easy one. So if you want an easy one, if you just want to pop a pill, this video isn't for you. And my information and my perspective on this, it's not going to work for you, and you're just going to battle anyway. But you can continue to suffer in this one, or you can suffer momentarily. It's kind of like, Ross Perot would have been a great president. He would have done a lot of good things for people in this country. Ron Paul. But of course, every 4 years, it's the most important election of our time. Every 4 years. It's just that you can't vote for these people because this one's too important. So red or blue. And pretty much all of us, at least on my friends, and maybe I live in an echo chamber of sorts, but can see that they're all part of the same problem. And all this is done by design. So my first thing would be to say this. Audit the Federal Reserve. And when you realize that the Federal Reserve there's nothing backing the Federal Reserve note, aka the American dollar. I did a video on that before. I'm not going to go into it. There's nothing backing it. The Fed not only is operating in the red, but they've been busy buying up assets, because when this whole thing does come down, because remember, all fiat-based systems collapse. They all do. 100% they all have, and ours will too. And they know this, and they actually plan for this. That's why I asked, do you know what the Federal Reserve is and who started it and why? And if you start looking into it, there's a book out there by G. Edward Griffin called The Creature from Jekyll Island. I got a story about that too. But it's a great read about all this, and it actually should be implemented in the school systems no later than 9th grade. They should make it mandatory to study these things. But they don't want you to know. But this is the root of the problem is this central banks. And if you audit the Federal Reserve and realize that they're not holding anything of value, they're just buying up assets with that debt, with that money. They're doing it for a specific reason. And a lot. Then again, they don't teach you this stuff, because if you did know, you'd be pissed off. You would be carrying torches and pitchforks. Henry Ford had said that as well. The American people don't understand their banking institutions. For if they did, there'd be a revolution before tomorrow. There's all these people quoting all these things. Andrew Jackson was shot twice at 2 separate incidences trying to stop the central bankers during his time. So all of this stuff that's happening today, it's been planned for. I mean, Major General Smedley Butler wrote something called War is a Racket. He stopped actually the New World Order from advancing in the 20s and 30s. But nobody's ever heard of him. Nobody's ever heard of his article, because they don't want you to know about the military-industrial complex. Kennedy was shot over it, and Eisenhower followed. Eisenhower, when he left office, warned you about the military-industrial. All of these things, this is what I'm saying, it's hard to stay on topic and offer solutions because there's so much involved. And I think that avalanche of information and just how everything is so tied to money. I mean, what is it? 95% of our problems revolve around money. So if you don't understand what money is, how it's created, who did it, and why, then can you actually understand any of our problems? Can you say that you actually truly understand all of the problems? Because that's why I say I don't know anything. I have my perspective on things, but I can't know everything. And I can't be sure I know anything because I don't have all the information. And I recognize that. But with the information I do have, and we all do this, we form opinions. But the important part is to try to get as much information as you can from all different sources, and then form that opinion, and then talk to other people because they might have other information that you don't have. Like I said, there are people that believe that we need a Federal Reserve. I don't. We need to audit it, and then once we find out that it's operating in the red and what it's doing behind the scenes is bankrupting people on purpose, then we need to shut it down. That's what needs to happen, and everybody that's involved in it knowingly needs to be tried. and whatever verdict and whatever punishment is laid out by the people, so be that. I'm not going to be the arbiter of that justice there, but that's what needs to happen in order to free humanity, because these central bankers are operating around the world. And if you look at who we've invaded over the last 20 years, you'll notice something, that none of those countries had a central bank. Muammar Gaddafi was trying to unite the North African countries under the gold dinar. Look what we did to him. Saddam Hussein was starting to trade his oil in the euro. Look what we did to him. I mean, it's again, information. I have my information, everybody else has theirs, but talk about it and see if what makes sense. So as we move forward, I guess an important point would be to say, are you guys being prepared for the inevitable? And whether it happens in 2 years or 20 years, just understand that inflation is going to take hold. So I had somebody tell me one time that, well, you can't go back to gold and silver. And I don't necessarily, I want that to be a part of it, but that necessarily might not be just the thing. But he said, because then there's no way to control for and adjust for inflation or deflation. And there's nobody to accelerate the economy and to borrow and all these. Well, again, that's the question. Do you want that type of system? Do you want a system that impoverishes people, even though they want to work, even though they can work? Again, 100% of the people can't get in the black. It's impossible. It's impossible. We need to borrow. There needs to be a permanent poor. And so that's kind of step one. And it will lead to solutions. And the solutions, again, will be kind of painful. But hey, that's growth. Every time you grow in your life, it's painful, right? You haven't ever truly grown spiritually in your life without pain. So this is going to be the same thing. The second thing is too, it kind of part and parcel to this, is to, what I would do is go to a consumption-based system, tax system. One, it's more fair, and two, it'll teach people to become savers and investors and inventors and producers and manufacturers and things like that, versus just teaching them to consume. And so, I had a conversation with a past client over dinner one time and kind of dropped it, because we kind of ended it with this, is that he said, well, consumption tax is a regressive tax. I said, how so? Well, it hurts the poor more than it hurts the rich and the middle class. I said, the whole tax system is regressive to the 99.999% of us. And keep in mind that the IRS, although it was established in the 1800s mainly to fund wars, it became permanent. The income tax became permanent in 1913, the same year the Federal Reserve Act was passed. That's not a coincidence. That was done by design and on purpose. So both of these two go hand in hand. And I'm not going to get into whether the 16th Amendment was properly ratified by the Senate. It was the corruption that's happening today, and we all see it, was happening then. It's more out in the open now, and the information's there. Why we don't care, I don't know, and why they didn't care back then, I don't know. Psychologically, this is a whole different video for human beings, but part of it is confusion of information. For instance, capitalism. I hear free market capitalism got us here. We haven't lived in a capitalistic society. I mean, honestly, splitting hairs, but for sure since the 70s. And we can go all the way back probably to the 20s and 30s if you really want to get picky with it. But even that term, free market capitalism, well, there is no such thing as, it's an oxymoron. You either have a free market or you have a capitalist society. And the difference is, there's a couple, but the main difference is that there's government intervention in a capitalistic society because it's based on a fiat system. And whenever you have fiat money that's being able to be printed, then institutions and corporations will grow up and grow large depending upon if they're in bed with the bankers that they're borrowing from. And so then all of a sudden you have a few controlling the many via jobs and production and money. And so then labor unions form, and then antitrust laws form, and all of these mechanisms that are put into the system in order to stop these abuses of corporations. And that's all well and good. And you do need that in a capitalistic society. You do need government intervention. I'm saying I don't want government intervention in a system. I want hierarchies that conform between people voluntarily to get things done, but we don't need that type of intrusion in our lives using a debt-based system. Let's get away from that. And so in a free market, which is where I would like to go with sound money, and to an asset or resource-based system where you are the asset, you're the resource, as well as gold and silver, whatever people want to trade. And but you're still the resource now, you just don't know it. So fiat, there is no value intrinsically in fiat money, in our paper money, but that's not entirely true, because you are the energy behind that Federal Reserve note. You trade your time, your labor, and your skill set every day to go earn money. So that's the value in that money. And when they inflate it, they're taking more of that. They're taking more of your time. Do you want to continue to live in that system, or do you want to learn what the system is and then how to grow out of it? So that's my solution to this problem. End the Fed and go back to a truly fair system, equitable system that allows people to produce and consume at their own rate and live their life their own way. And whether or not we keep pace with the rest of the world in terms of technology, I think we would. I think actually now, I think we're stifling so much creativity and invention by people who are too busy doing other things. So I would make the argument that we might even become more equipped to evolve scientifically and technologically faster, and that technology would be more organic, because there's technology that exists and has existed for decades that we as people still aren't using right now. Nikola Tesla would be a great example of that. And so as we move forward and experience more problems, because they're coming, they're not even shy about telling you. King Klaus Schwab said by 2030 you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. They're talking about a great reset. They put it out there. This is a lot of what's happening is part and parcel to the reset that they want. They're not. This isn't conspiracy theory. This isn't my personal rhetoric and conjecture. This is fact. They're putting this stuff out there. I have my own opinion as far as what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. And although time frames change, I have a general guideline. It's not to say I'm right. I don't know, because I don't have all the information. But from the information that they're telling us, it seems to me like the Federal Reserve is continuing to buy up assets so that when it does collapse, they own everything. And you guys will just have to research that yourself, because this is, again, going to be too long. But anyway, getting back to the IRS and a consumption tax, is that my friend, to circle back, said, it's a regressive tax. The thing of it is that if and I'm not disagreeing that it would hurt the poor, depending upon how much the consumption tax rate was, but if you have that, then you're more in control of what the government does earn and what the government does spend, because right now we don't have much control over that. None of us have control over it. They're going to do whatever they want. They're going to raise the debt ceiling. They're going to continue to print trillions and trillions of dollars, inflate the currency, and bankrupt more and more people. That's coming. So do you want that system? The way out to help the poor in this and to teach them is so this is a solution to the problem of people who say it's a regressive tax. And I'm just going to end this video at this because it's coming up on 20 minutes. But if you think a consumption tax is bad because it's regressive, understand you then have a say in how much you want to put in and be taxed. Not to mention the IRS goes away. Me as a business owner, how wonderful it would be not to be stressed out about April 15th. How wonderful it would be to know that, well, I produced this much this year and I consumed, or I produced, yeah, I produced this much this year and I consumed this much raw material and this is the product and services I had to buy for my business in order to generate this amount of income. I want to do 10% more next year. So all I have to do is figure out how to grow that 10% and where to allocate that within my model. How easy that would be. But the problem is that the government loses more control. And like I said, now they want to know $600, every $600. It's like they want more control. And money is the tool to that control, especially debt money. So the power needs to be given back to where it belongs, in the people's hands. And so you can get rid of the IRS. All of the the majority of the tax accountants goes away unless you're running a really big business. You don't have to worry about any of that. You can do your own records fairly easily and bookkeeping pretty easily. I mean, how much stress would be lifted from people not having to pay an income tax? And so, again, there are problems that people bring up to consumption taxes, like how much would the tax rate be? But that's a problem. That's not a problem with of revenue generation or taxation. That's a problem of government spending. They're not efficient. They're not effective. They never have been, never will be. The private sector will always be more efficient and always be more effective. And if you want to establish hierarchies to do this or that, so be it. But you shouldn't be forced and violently and oppressively coerced to participate in anything you don't want to if you were truly free. And they don't want you to know that. And they don't want you to be free. That's why they have the system designed the way that they do. So anyway, in order to help the poor and to get people to think differently about the system and to think about saving and investing versus consuming and borrowing, let's help those people out then. Because quite frankly, they're not consuming enough to facilitate a rapid growth anyway in an economy, right? By the way, all the economic numbers and data regarding inflation and job and unemployment, they're all fictitious anyway. They're all lying. They don't take into consideration so many different variables, like inflation doesn't take housing and food and energy into it. And you know what I'm saying? So they're all fake anyway. But help these poor people out by saying every location geographically in the United States has a poverty line. So in Stearns County, I don't know what it is today. I probably should have looked it up before I started this, but years ago it was about 21,000. Let's just say it's 25,000. Well, let's give these people a tax break then. For every month they get $500 worth of a tax break. So the first 500, all the money that they spend, whatever they would spend on taxes is free for the first $500. And in LA it might be $2,300 a month, in Dallas it might be $1,800 a month, whatever it is in that geographical area to help those people. Just give them that break. That way that'll help them get ahead, produce more, be happier and healthier, and it'll teach them to save and invest that money properly, as well as getting them up to the next threshold where they do become producers and do become people who participate in being in all of those things that we need as a society. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you're worried about them just staying there because it's comfortable, well then give them 2 years, 5 years, or whatever. You have this, or graduate it off. I don't have all of these things worked out, but I have I know what I perceive to be the major problem. I know the steps to solving it. But there's going to be things that come up that we need to work through for sure. And I don't have all those answers. I'm an idiot. And so even I know that this would be a better way than what we're currently doing. So if I'm an idiot, you can be rest assured that your ruling class knows exactly what I know as well. Like I said, this goes back before Henry Ford and the founding fathers warned us of central banks taking control. So it's nothing new under the sun. But there are solutions to these problems. And why we sit and wallow in this pit, I don't know. We're too busy arguing with each other. That's what I'm saying. We got to get to the root cause and then cast aside our pride for a second and say, you know what, maybe it is possible I really don't know everything I need to know to form a real and correct opinion on the matter and be able to change our minds. So anyway, it's been a pleasure. I hope that you found it informational and important. And like I said before, go out and talk. Talk with one another, love one another again, and get that energy back, because that's what this whole thing is about. And honestly, as painful and hard as it is to prepare for things that we've never had in our life, there's a cognitive dissonance in these psychological things. If nothing bad will ever happen to me, this idea that nothing bad will ever happen to me because nothing bad has ever happened to me, that's a dangerous cycle. It's also dangerous to go on the other side of that spectrum and constantly live in fear that something bad's going to happen to me. So somewhere in between, we all need to reside and go and be very vigilant in seeing everything that's going on, so that we can anticipate really bad times and trying to correct those things. And I think we've been asleep far too long, and ignorant far too long on a lot of these matters. And now they're just using that against us, and the energy against us, to get us to fight with one another. And it's dangerous, and we are coming up on dangerous times. And I know I've said that in the past, but here we are. Look at what's going on around the world. So anyway, it's just something to think about. Throw some comments down, please, and go out and enjoy the day. And I appreciate it if you made it this far. Take care, guys.